talking about stickers again today, specifically more irregular shapes than the simple rectangle that I showed you in my last video. I've chosen some relatively simple animal shapes for this. We're going to start with this penguin. So I'm going to open him up in silhouette, and then we need to trace him. So we're going to open our trace panel from the right hand side and select the trace area, and then we draw around the penguin, and of course we see our usual yellow area that tells us where it is tracing, and we can see that his feet are missing. Darker colours always trace first, and because the feet are in a slightly lighter orange, they're not registering. So for that we need to increase the threshold until they start appearing, and there we go, that'll probably do. I don't need to be too perfect with this. I usually switch to outline. I find that easier to visualize for some reason, and I can see that I've got a good enough selection around the edge there. It doesn't need to be too perfect because I'm going to be making him into a sticker, and so I'm going to be putting a little extra around him anyway, so that will do quite nicely. And I'm going to choose this middle option of trace outer edge because of course I don't want to be tracing the piece in the middle or around his eyes. And so that's done. Now if I click anywhere near him again, you can see that we've got a rather big bounding box around him. It's over 8 inches. And I'm going to get rid of that extra space because it will get in the way later. So let's open the modify panel from the right hand side. I'll just slide across again. And then I'm going to draw around both the original penguin image and make sure I select up and over to get the cut line as well, which I've got just a faint grey line there that's showing me that I've selected it. And once I've got them both like that, I'm going to click crop. And now I've got rid of all that extra space. Now I'm going to resize. So this is where you've got to decide what sort of size you think you want your animal. I'm going to have a guess at 1.5 inches tall, and I've got my padlock checked here so that my aspect ratio will stay the same, and so when I press enter the width will change to appropriate width, and it keeps the penguin in a penguin shape. You usually know that when I'm doing anything that I know I'm going to be printing and cutting, to have an idea that it will look at the right size, I zoom in by 1, and that means my inch measurement here on the screen measures 1 inch on my ruler if I held one up to the screen, and that just helps me make sure that I'm getting something that's going to look right once printed. Now I'm going to add an offset to give me a white border. So let's open the offset panel from the right hand side over here. You can also open it from the star up here, but I'm going to open it from the right, and I'm going to click offset. I'm going to keep it with curved lines, and now I've just got to decide on the size. And I know from previous experience of doing this that I like a 0.06 to give me a little white edge, and I think that'll look all right. And then draw around them both and group together. So that's our first animal done. Now let's quickly do the others. Let's start with the elephant, and it's exactly the same process. I'm going to select the trace area, make sure I catch everything, which I haven't here, look, at least is. And of course it's not picking up because there's quite a lot of light shades here. So let's keep taking up our threshold. I think I'll probably need to take it all the way up. I do. Can you see down here we've got an extra little bit of yellow? See there? That means when I do this trace we're going to have this bit down here, and it's worth noticing that because we'll get rid of it. So again, I'm going to switch to outline and have a little look, and yeah, that'll do. I'm going to do my trace outer edge as before, and as you can see I've got my little extra bit there that I'm not going to want. First of all, let's do the drawing around everything as I did before and click crop. And now, I don't know if you can see, but I've got that extra little line there that tells me that's the bit that I don't want, and I can just select it now. It's just a light colour and click cut. And I'll come out again. And let's resize this. I'm going to keep the same height, 1.5 inches. Press enter, and then I'm going to do my offset of 0.06 and click apply. Draw around both and group together. Now I'm going to copy it and paste it over here to go with my penguin. Next I'm going to open my third animal, a bear. Same thing, select trace area, and again because there's quite a lot of light colours we're going to have to increase the threshold until I get an outline that I like. Yes, that'll do. Trace outer edge again because I don't want anything in the middle. Tracing, select both and crop, and then resize, and again I'm going for 1.5 inches. Press enter, and then we'll do the offset again, 0.06, apply, group, and then let's copy him to our penguin and our elephant. And now I've got 3 animals, all at 1.5 inches height. I'm going to close my modify and offset panels by clicking the X up there, and also the trace panel. I don't need that now. I'm going to zoom out with fit to window. I don't like working on the original of a file that I've opened, just in case I happen to alter the file that I've purchased or downloaded by mistake. And so for that reason I am going to copy my 3 animals, copy, and paste them into a new document which also has the registration marks on for print and cut, so that I now know I've got to lay them all out within the red print and cut border. The quickest way to do that, of course, is to do some duplicating, and let's just duplicate a whole load of these. I don't know why I'm moving them really, I don't need to, doesn't really matter. So let's have a few, there we go, that'll do. And of course it's now a case of arranging them on the paper in such a way as to make the best use of the space. So let's start with the envelope. Let's start with the elephant at the top and just line a few up. And I'm doing it from quite a distance out, but if I zoom in a little, we can have a closer look and make sure well, you can get these as close as you like, really, as long as you're not overlapping. And we're all right under the hatch marks here. It will print and cut. And we've got a little bit of space at the end there that might fit a bear look. So that will do quite nice. Oh no, it doesn't, does it? It's because he was hiding behind the colour thing there. No, we're not going to fit anything in there. So let's put our first bear down here. And remember, you don't have to keep everything straight. You can rotate a little to make the best use of the space. There we go. And let's put this one in and give him a little rotate as well. And move him up. Oops, a bit too close. And this is really what will now take your time. Once you've mastered your trace and cut and your offset, you saw that actually went quite quickly once you knew what you were doing. It's this that's going to take the time. Sorting out how to arrange everything to fill your page. You can spend as little or as long on it. It really is up to you, of course, and it depends how much of the paper you want to save by being as economical as possible. I'm going to use the fit to window to zoom out for the moment. So you can see how we do this. We just literally keep filling up the space. Now I'm just going to move some of these off each other in a random way. You'll see why in a moment. There we go. Right, that should do. Let's try that. If you have Designer or Business Edition, there is a tool that will help you some of the way to doing this, where you won't have to do it all manually. And it's called the nesting panel. So we'll open it here. You set a boundary, and in this case it's going to be the cut area because we want to fill a full sheet of stickers. Only shapes on media is checked as default, and that means, I think, if it's on the paper. I've never checked to see if something is just, well, let's put one off on the mat, whether that counts as media. It might do, but certainly if anything is in your space over to the left here, in fact let's put a penguin over there, he won't get moved. I'm going to leave everything else on the default settings so that you can see what happens. So align is unchecked, we'll leave padding at 1 and rotations at 2, and then we'll click nest. And you can see it's done a fairly decent job, but one thing I noticed is that it can be a bit random. So for instance, we've got a bear behind an elephant here, and we have got quite a bit of space that things would fit into perhaps. So it's done a relatively good job, but it's not perfect. We've got a bear left here on top of a penguin. So let's undo. Right. Now let's tick the align, but leave the other settings the same and click nest. Again, it's done a relatively good job. As I thought, the penguin over here didn't move, but neither did the bear on the mat. So it probably does mean that only shapes on media is if it's on the actual paper. And again, we've got some overlap. We've got bears where we shouldn't have, and well, it's not bad, but it's not brilliant. So let's undo again. Let's take padding down to 0 And let's turn rotations up to 4 and click Nest again. It's done a slightly better job. We have still got a couple of overlaps. We've got a bear under a bear and penguin there, and we've got one up there for some reason. But that's not bad actually. And I would probably think, okay, I can work with that. So I'm going to take out the bear from behind, and I'm going to take out this bear that's hiding behind here. And I've got a relatively good set of stickers. It's used up the space quite well. If I think I can do a better job, I can start from this now and decide, for instance, maybe I can move that elephant up into that space there, like so. And my bear will have to move a little bit. There we go. And that means I can move this envelope. Why do I want to call it an envelope? Elephant. So you can see that using Nest, while it might not suit your purposes entirely, it gives you somewhere to start from and maybe cuts down a little bit on the time. And you can then work out if you can do a better job or just make a slightly different job and get a little bit more out of your paper. I'm not going to actually sit and do this, the whole sheet, although it's strangely compelling, I have to say. It's the sort of thing I'd sit and do, you know, grab a cup of tea and just sit fiddling. So I'd better stop or you'll be bored. Off screen, I closed all the images so that we can discuss one more option. It might be that you don't want a white border around your image. Perhaps you want your penguin, your bear and your elephant in this case to be solid colour with no border of any description. So I thought we'd better cover that too. So let's open our images again. Let's start with our penguin. Oh, and I've turned my grid off this time as well because I want to be able to see the lines. Let's open our trace panel and do the trace as we did before. Increase it so that we get the feet, put outline on, and maybe zoom in a bit and have a look. And it's very close. I think that's pretty good. And so I'm going to click Trace Outer Edge. Now, at a small size, the bits where it just doesn't make a sharp corner between the foot there, it's very, very minuscule. I doubt would even be noticeable. And so we can do the usual thing that we did before where we select them both, open the modify panel and crop so that we get rid of all that extra space. Next, let's make sure that the red cut line is on after cropping. And we can now resize like we did before. And you might decide, because there's no border this time, let's make it 1.6 inches in height. And if I use my draw around shape to zoom in tool, we can zoom in and have a good old look and see if it's close enough for us. And yes, look, we've got a really, really tiny bit of white showing there, but I think that will be quite good enough. So let's have another look at one of the others, and should we do the elephants this time? And we need to select our trace area as before. Take up the threshold, put it on outline, trace outer edge, zoom in just a little, select, crop, get rid of that little bit that we don't want, make sure the line is on after the cropping, zoom in to double check that it's and you can see here it hasn't been quite as accurate. We're going to get a little white border around this, and it's because it was a lighter colour, so it hasn't been as good in doing the trace as we might like. So in this case I'm going to do a little offset, and it'll be an internal offset, and I'm going to take down the size until it's just inside the colour part of my elephant. Then I'm going to click the original image, click in the colour and take off the cut line. So now the cut line is our offset and it's inside the coloured bit. Still a little bit at the corners there, but on the whole that's much better, and I'm not losing very much of my original shape. And you can zoom round and just have a check of all your edges on your elephant to make sure you're happy. It's got a little bit there that I might, if I was being really fiddle with point editing, but for the purposes of this I'm not going to bother. That will do nicely. I'm going to zoom out, and of course because the offset isn't attached to the image, I'm going to draw around both of them and group them together before I do the resize, and we'll make it 1.6 inches. And again, if you want to have another look once you've resized, draw around the shape and zoom in. Draw around the shape again and zoom in. And it's a little bit off there, but I think that will be alright, it won't matter too much. Once you're happy with your tracing and your cut lines, it's simply a matter of copying and pasting your shapes, your characters, or in this case the animals, onto your sticker sheet again and arranging them to make the best use of your paper. And once that's done, it's a case of doing a test cut and adjusting your settings to suit the paper that you've got, so that you actually get good, clean, crisp labels. That's all for this video. I hope I've helped you with your stickers once again, and until I see you next time, take care.